Hello, beautiful women, and welcome. I am so happy to have you with us here for today's masterclass, The Feminine Arc, Unlock Your Story and Inner Power. For those of you who are new here, I'm Leah Skye, founder of the Feminine Network, a community for supporting women in business to bloom through connection, visibility, education, and genuine support. The Feminine Network is all about creating spaces where women can come together, not just to grow their businesses, but to feel seen, supported, and reminded that we don't have to do any of this alone. Today's masterclass is such a beautiful one because we're exploring the feminine arc, the different stages, seasons, and transitions, and the inner stories we move through as women. Whether you're in a season of change, stepping into a new version of yourself, navigating a transition in life or business, or simply feeling called to understand yourself more deeply, I think this conversation is going to meet you in a really powerful way. I'm so honoured to introduce you to our guest teacher today, Verena. Verena will be guiding us through this exploration of story, feminine power, and the inner journey we move through as women. This is such an important conversation because so many of us are carrying stories that have shaped who we are, how we show up, and what we believe is possible for ourselves. My hope is that today gives you language, insight, and maybe even a little permission to see your own story in a new way. Before we begin, just a couple of things. This session is being recorded, so if you need to duck out or you want to revisit it later, you'll be able to watch the replay once it's available. You're welcome to use the chat throughout, say hello, share where you're joining from, and let us know what lands for you as we go. And most importantly, take what feels useful, leave what doesn't, and let this be a space where you can arrive exactly as you are. So with that, I'm going to hand you over to the beautiful Verena for the feminine arc. Welcome, Verena.
Welcome, and I feel really excited to share this information with you today. So I'll just introduce myself briefly. Leah has already done that. She's introduced the topic, but my name's Verena White, and I'm a kinesiologist, a mindset coach, reflexologist, and also a super conscious coach. And so I've been working in this field for about 10 years and definitely working with the unconscious and help. And my specific point is that I love working with women that are going through transitions in life. And through working with women going through transitions, it became very clear to me that working with our archetypes or our feminine arc is a beautiful blueprint of how to understand and manage the transitions in life. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to be talking about the feminine arc, the journey, the female journey, the journey of identity, power, and evolution. So what is the feminine arc? The feminine arc can come, it's like a blueprint, like a map that we look at as how women we can handle change, why change occurs, why it's different. So it's looking at how life is in cycles. Because the usual map of growth or success that we look in the more masculine form is linear, but the feminine is actually, we work in cycles. We work in transitions and we work in initiations. And that will be a little bit clearer as I move forward. So the first question I'd probably ask is, have you ever felt like you've outgrown who you used to be? Maybe that's something you're going through now. Maybe it's something you can recall, where something you just didn't feel that things were the same, you were changing, and maybe there's even points of where you didn't really feel clear about that. Maybe there's the loss of identity, disconnection from purpose, when we move into overwhelm and burnout. And there's just that quiet sense that something needs to change. And after working with women for so long, there's very few that can say that they've never actually felt that. I think women often go through an identity crisis at different times of their life. And like I said, they're initiations, because as women, we move through, we're working with the archetypes, which is maiden, mother, and wise woman. So our first initiation into the feminine journey is aligned with menstruation. The next initiation into motherhood is mother, which doesn't mean that it doesn't necessarily mean the woman has to become a mother, but this is where we move into more of a service or responsibility in our life. And then our final initiation into motherhood is menopause. And that's when we move into wise woman. And those transitions, chapters of our life, I'm going to go through today, and how we can use that story, one, to understand ourselves a little better, and also how to use this physiological, energetic blueprint to actually work out when we are going through overwhelm, burnout, or feeling a little lost, we can return to this and actually understand our story a little better. One of the great seeds that I love reminding women, and often we don't think of it, is actually we as women have 3 portals that connect us to the non-physical. Men have 2, connect and bring life in. We have our heart space, which is our first indication of life. So when the first sign of life through an ultrasound is the heartbeat, and that frequency I often connect to as our connection to universal consciousness, how we learn how to create. When we're just a cell, we have a heartbeat. So that's a connection to the non-physical. And our third connection is our third eye, our intuition. And so women having 3, it means we are the bridge to the non-physical. And often when we can remind ourselves of that simple physiological, energetic connection as women, that we do have an ability to move through changes with ease and grace. It's often when we're trying to push through a more masculine format or blueprint that we do often feel that we've lost ourselves a little bit. So it's always returning to our story. So how I found this practice work best, and how I've used it with my clients and how I've used it on myself, is that, one, you find a deeper understanding of your personal evolution. We are always moving through maiden, mother, wise woman. There's no end. Once we sort of transition, have an initiation, we actually can use these elements to move in and out of for our own well-being and our own transition into new chapters. We get a stronger connection to our intuition and inner voice, because as women, we are very intuitive. We have a connection to a knowingness that is a real gift. And that's how, with our womb, heart, and third eye connected, we can connect to this unbelievable sense of knowing. When we actually connect into our power, we get clarity around our next chapter when we understand the chapters that we're in, and a renewed sense of power, identity, and direction. And so as we are moving through, if it's creating a new business or things are changing for, let's say, children are moving to school, children are leaving home, whether it's the end of relationships, it's important that we can go back to connect into our story. So the feminine arc, as I mentioned, it's not linear, it's not fixed, it's a cyclical journey of becoming, and it is there from the moment we are born. But as we grow and as we get older, we're connecting and initiating into these aspects. But as I'll make clear, it doesn't matter if you're in Maiden, you have access to the mother's nurturing and wisdom. You've got access to your intuition of the wise woman. And the wise woman has access to the beautiful joy creation of the maiden. So the maiden, mother, and wise woman. And the 3 core elements of these that help us understand is to understand our identity in the chapter that we're in our life. We understand where our power is coming from, that we have this power within us to move through transitions and changes, and to understand our evolution. And it's often I find that women may feel stuck or have lack of clarity when they're not really sure where they are in their chapters, in their initiations in life, when or when they're moving through from when a maiden is moving to mother. A young woman who's becoming a mother may grieve her maiden life. She may or may not understand who she is anymore. And I think this comes up a lot. And understanding that it is growth, that you never lose yourself. You're just expanding and you're becoming a greater version of yourself. And then we'll go through the different aspects of these three: the maiden, the mother. The maiden is the identity. And this is where we look at it's not only physiological, but it's energetic and it's archetypal. And archetypes work so well when we're trying to work out where we are, where we're going, where we've been, and to understand our story. Because our story and how we tell our story is very important on what we then create. So the maiden is the sacral chakra, which is just under the belly button. It's connected to the womb, which is the portal, which is where we bring life in. And the aspects of the maiden are discovery. It's a sense of possibility. There's a sense of desire. You're starting to understand yourself as a woman, sensually, and your sexuality and your creativity. The emotion very much connected to the maiden is joy. And of course, there's always a shadow aspect of some women may have had a difficult maiden journey, but that's always about, we can always deal with that to understand that maybe there was some belief systems that were held in the maiden that have held us back. Maybe one that comes to mind is constantly seeking approval. And as we get older, the mother, the wise woman, will no longer, a healed mother, wise woman, will no longer need to look at that sense of approval. And that's something that when you work with the archetypes, you can actually heal that maiden version of yourself. And there's also the maiden who maybe is pushing up against that sense of approval, and they're reclaiming their identity. They're moving from child to woman. And it's a beautiful time of blossoming as a woman. And it's also a time, put in the most beautiful way, that it can be a time of selfishness, that it's very much about that person, about what you want, and you've got no responsibilities. And this is often when we're moving from maiden to mother, where we go from selfishness or sense of self to selflessness, where we become someone who is looking at responsibility and being of service to your family, service to your community, service to your career. There comes a time when the woman will be looking for that kind of fulfillment. We're living a life of just for me no longer is fulfilling. And part of the woman's journey where we connect in to our heart space is the mother archetype. And the mother archetype, when we move into that, that is connected to the heart chakra. It's connected to your sense of unconditional love. The heart itself is the portal, the physiological aspect. The heart itself is the portal. And it is connected to the emotions of service and unity. It's like when we see the world, that's when you'll see, the warrior mother fighting for rights of certain, whatever it is that there is belief about. We're looking for purpose as a woman during this time, because it becomes about selflessness. And this is where there's nurturing creation. We're holding space, we're giving. There's a lot of responsibility and service in this period. And this is definitely a period where burnout and overwhelm can come in. And this is moving back in that we have the power, that we can connect to our womb space of creation. We can connect to our third eye for intuition, to be able to move in to this archetype, this chapter of your life. And the shift is like from where you're giving your power away, and this is the burnout, to holding power within. and to understand that you do have this power and that this is creation. This is when you're the most amazing multitasker. This is when you can do so many things at once and you're wearing many different hats and roles. So the mother is a real sense of power, and we can move into that at any time. We can move into this sense of power. And I won't say final chapter, but our next chapter, The Wise Woman, is all about evolution. It is who we're becoming. And very much the aspect, the chakra, the energetic aspect is the third eye. The portal is our intuition. The portal is that knowing, that synchronicity, the pituitary gland, the one that you have aspect that you just have a sense of knowing. And it makes sense as women go into perimenopause and menopause. There's actually brain scans that the brain actually changes, because this is where the energy is being pushed up from the sacral to the heart to the third eye. And in ancient times, this aspect, this archetype, this chapter of life was very much about leadership. It was when the wise woman became the oracle, because their intuition was so, it really came into its own, it exploded. And the negative aspect was what maybe when they started looking at witches, but it was because the women in this time became medicine women. They were the oracles, they were the seers, they were the ones that guided the tribe out of danger. They were the midwives. They would look after the children. They would be the storytellers. So heal their children or what to do. They knew, and they held down the legacy. They were the storytellers. They told what their history was. And the wise woman in our current form, I think we are changing with our first initiation with Maiden, that we're celebrating it a lot more for young women than maybe when I went through that stage. I feel I don't have a daughter, but I have heard from other people that have daughters, it's a much more celebrated sense of womanhood than it was before. The mother is celebrated. The wise woman is often pushed away. And even though there's a lot more awareness about perimenopause and menopause now, it's still in a place of, I'm not who I was. There's something wrong with me. But this is one of the most powerful stages of us, of the feminine. And this is the time when we no longer seek permission and there's a deep knowing. And often the losing of the estrogen is, they talk about sort of, we lose our empathy or wanting to be validated by others. So we become a lot more truthful, and we do not longer need to seek permission from others to be ourselves. So authenticity is really important. So these are the three aspects of the sacred feminine. The sacred arc, the feminine arc, where we go from the womb, the heart, to the third eye, and where we are the bridge to the non-physical. And I think to remember that we do have that power, that it is cyclical, and that our map to success is different to one of the masculine. And that we do have access to this inner knowing. And it's when women try to switch off this inner knowing that often they feel disconnected and they're not connected with themselves. So how does knowing this information help you? It's knowing that this is your story. Everyone's chapter will be different, but it is a blueprint. We go through it. We have a maiden, mother, and wise woman. There is another archetype that can be brought in, which I don't talk about clearly, is there's the queen, which is the in-between. Would it be yes, I'll get that for sure. I'll just get that chat off. So, and the energies, we're always moving towards these energies. So when we are facing periods of time when there is a transition, that we can understand that we can start moving towards these energies, and understand that, of course, there's going to be a feeling of a disconnect when we move from maiden to mother. but working together. And this is why when women gather in circles, it's so important, because they can share their wisdom. And it's also the perspective of the stories we tell. So the story we tell shapes our life. So knowing this arc, knowing what it means, we can go back and work with each chapter of our life. And even if you are in mother, you can start working with, okay, what aspect of my maiden do I want to reframe and tell a new story and see it from another perspective? And then moving into motherhood, how will I use my power and not give it away and access my beautiful womb as a creation point, and also my third eye, my intuition of a sense of knowingness. So the next part of is reframe the story. You are the author. So when we move in our 3 archetypes, we move from pain to power, to experience to wisdom, from survival to strength. This is the power beyond the feminine arc. We get to shift our story. We get to change it from one being that this happened to me, that I am resilient and the creator of my path forward. Because once the female, the woman, knows how powerful she is, when she accesses her feminine arc, she is capable of so much. And the story we tell about our lives, about ourselves, is so important, and it paves the way for our future. So Carl Jung talked about archetypes, and archetypes work really well in with working with our unconscious. He talks about archetypes, but there's a collective consciousness that understands. So when we speak in stories, when we speak in archetypes, our unconscious understands, and it's a better way of retraining our unconscious and our belief systems to be a different way. So if we come from the story that as a female we are weak, we are less than, a story I tell, well, that it's always an uphill battle. It's always the world against us. But when we frame our story from the feminine arc that realizes that we are the bridge to the non-physical, to pure, to consciousness, then we create a very different story. We do create one from pain to power, from experience to wisdom, from survival to strength. And that is the resilience of reframing the story and the power of reframing a story. And as we go back and see again and mention the 3 portals, which is the bridge to our power, the core to our power, the physiology, the energetics, and the archetypal storytelling, the sacral, which is the womb, the heart, which is about connection and connected to the mother, and the third eye, which is intuition and is connected to the wise woman. As I said before, you are the bridge. And this is the seed that I want to land today, is that you are the bridge between the physical and the intuitive, between experience and wisdom, between who you have been and who you are becoming. It was like speaking before, it's like your wise woman, if you're in your maiden or mother years, your wise woman is like your future self intuitively guiding you. You have access to this information. The mother helps you move into maturity and understand responsibility and service. And the maiden is your beautiful innocence of excitement, joy, and inspiration. And these are the things that we can bring in together to create the story of our life, to create goals, to set intentions, and to live authentically aligned to our true nature and purpose. And one of the processes that you can do when you want to use this, when you're going through those challenges, when you're in between chapters of your life, or when you do feel that I'm not myself, or there's something that needs to change in my life. The practice is, one, you can come and see myself, who works directly with your unconscious using kinesiology and soul-led coaching, where the pause and reflect, and you go through these actual physical parts of the body, touching, putting your hands on your womb and asking what messages there are for there, moving to your heart space and understanding what is true for you there, and understanding from through the lens of your heart and your womb to allow your thoughts to change and to move into your highest intuition. So when we pause and reflect, you ask yourself the question. These are like the journal entries that you may ask yourself for each archetype. Where am I in my arc? What story am I holding on to that may be stopping me from moving forward? And when you understand that old story, maybe from being a maiden, that you need validation, or you're looking for other people to validate you, trying to be like it's about my appearance, whatever insecurities you may have had in your maiden years, that is one that maybe when you're in your mother and wise woman, you don't need to hold on to them anymore. So what story am I holding on to? Maybe it's the mother of doing everything for everybody. In your wise woman years, you do not need that. The time has changed, and the older you get as an elder, your children or the younger people can come to you as a wise counsel. And then you ask yourself, what is ready to shift in my life at the moment? What is ready to shift? Am I ready to step into my wise woman years? Am I ready to be an oracle, a seer, a medicine woman? Am I ready to tap into my true nature and purpose? And then the next is, what identity is ready to emerge? And maybe it's a mixture of all. Maybe it's this fun, energetic, wise woman who's very nurturing, or the mother who's so intuitive, but is still got the essence and energy of the maiden. It's like, what am I trying to emerge here? What is my next chapter look like? So these are some of the processes you can do for yourself. It's just a way to understand your own story. Understanding where you've been and where you're going is the key to evolution, to your new identity, and to your direction. And so that's what I wanted to share with you today. If this does interest you to go further to find out where you are and what the path is, you can actually go onto my website, which Leah, I can actually put it in the chat. So that's at verenawhite.com.au, and there's a free clarity call. You can just put in and we can have a 20-minute, half an hour chat of where you are in your chapter and what transitions, what are the things you're struggling with? What things in your life do you want to reframe, and how do we do that? How do we understand your story, that it's one of empowerment, of that you can move from pain to power, survival to strength. We can work on what's your new story look like, and who are you becoming, and where are you going? We're not stopping of where you've been. We're acknowledging that story and moving into the next chapter. So if you wanted to look at that further, you could, the free clarity call is probably your best option. I work on Zoom, and I work with one-on-one in Cleveland in my clinic. And also I am holding a retreat with Leah. Leah's part of that. We're doing a retreat, the Wise Woman Retreat, in August on the 27th to the 30th. And this is what we're calling our sacred pause, which is for all women, no matter what transition or what chapter they're going through or what part of the arc they're in. It is for them to understand, to connect to their intuition. We're going to give tools on how to connect. And the true element of pause, which is so important when we have so many roles and masks and things that we're wearing to put everything together, to hold everything together in our life, to go to a place where we can just connect with like-minded women. So that's the Wise Woman Retreat, and we can definitely send you more information about that because we've got a few spots left. But if that's something where you want to go deeper and also just to be, that's something we're really excited about hosting. So I'm open to have any questions that anyone has, and I don't know if Leah's back in the room yet.
I
I'll
am.
stop
I
sharing.
am. I'm back here. Sorry, apologies. Whenever it rains, the internet goes a little bit unstable. So a couple of things I was thinking. Sienna's suggestion to get a copy of the mother slide and journal on it. Maybe once you're finished, when we're finished, you could sit down. I'll get you to give me the slides and then maybe a couple of journaling prompts that people can download. Everything would be
Yeah,
beautiful.
absolutely. That's a great idea. I love
Yeah.
that. And that's actually what we do when we do a workshop on this, and probably what we'll do during the retreat, and what I do with my clients one-on-one is that we go through each chapter, each arc, and where you're at. And even, you're in your maiden years, there's aspects that you can connect to, like the mother, like maybe there's the mother wound that we have to work with. So I know some women who don't have great relationships with their mother may have a real resistance to this. And so you want to work that out before you do become a mother. It's not imperative, but it does help with your own initiation and transition. And then, then it's also the mother to the wise woman. And depending on where you are, we can always look at also the mother, the queen, and the wise woman link as well. But yeah, it is, when I sort of really connected with this was actually, I looked probably at periods of time in my life. And one was when I had my son. And I had my son later, like I was in my late 30s. So I was actually in my mother age, but in my mind, I was still very much in my maiden, because I'd been in my maiden sort of lifestyle for a very long time. So when I did have my son, my identity, I did struggle with who am I now? What does this look like? Something I moved through with love, because I wanted to be a mother. It was a big choice of mine, but it is something some women struggle with. The other one is, even as a mother, I went through a point where I got divorced and that was definitely my mother archetype, because that was when this doesn't suit, when you went into one of service and responsibility as a mother, that I chose that certain relationship was not going to be one that fulfills me or my child. So that was a decision I made in that situation. And then again now in my perimenopause and menopause, going through, and also during mother, also when I changed my career from being in real estate to studying kinesiology, wellness, and also working with the unconscious mind and how our beliefs shape our life. And working with that and then understanding the female journey was so beautiful, because when we realize how powerful we are, that we have these three portals, we are blessed. We have a gift. And a lot of women don't realize that. And I think it's, we may see the world from a place that is built to be against us. But once we have this wisdom, we can actually start living for this world before us. I mean, with the chaos that's going on at the moment, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had more intuitive leaders or heart-centered leaders that had connection to the non-physical, that weren't just in a linear driven power struggle? It would be quite interesting, but this is where we can create change for ourselves, for our family, for our work, our friends, our business, our own journey.
I think it's really important that as when we hit that mother stage as well, that we have this knowledge so that we can then share it with the next generation. Because my maiden years, I didn't have them. I was an older sister to 4 younger siblings, and I met my husband when I was 17. We got married, had babies. So I never did the maiden thing until I hit about 35, 36. And then the maiden just reared in me really strongly. And having that come up when you're a mother was quite confronting, but having to balance those two aspects. And I think there's probably 2 years there where it was very, very confusing because I just didn't know what was happening, what was going on. Yeah, so
And I
I
think
think
that's a really good example because it's not linear. Like yours moved, but the need of the maiden is still there. That need to fulfill that, and also the balancing act of being a mother would be really interesting. But that's how we can work in, well, what's the healed versions of the maiden that I can bring into my life and not the wounded ones,
well,
you
the
know?
beautiful part about it was because I'd had that experience, I'm now able to share it with my children, and we've celebrated each of those milestones that they have gone through, from menstruation as my daughter, and for the boys as they hit puberty and having their glow ups, and being able to say to them, like, live these life, live this maiden, whether it's the boys or the girl, just live in that energy for this period of your life, because you're going to have plenty of time to live in your mother and your wise woman. And yeah, really, I feel very strongly about sharing it with other mothers so that when their children come through, they have this knowledge, this little toolkit that they can use to parent so that we don't have to heal it when we get older.
And there's another, it's more of a physical practice. So in the ancient times, the wise women, the medicine woman, when women were going through perimenopause, they would teach them how to move the energy from their womb to their third eye, so that it was like an initiation. And that can be done through breath work, that can be done through meditation. Um, and that's something I think it's really important to know, that women, as we move into this chapter, that we are not becoming less than, or we've got brain fog, or, there's a little, like, all the ladies here look a bit younger than me. So it's nice to be able to be taught that. No one taught me that. My mother, no one talked about menopause. We're starting to talk about it now because my generation is saying, yeah, we need to talk about this because we are valued and we're valuable. And so now we're moving back to this understanding of how valuable we are. And that this, when I was watching a lot of podcasts on perimenopause, and when they were talking about how the brain changes, it was like, it blew my mind. And of course it does. As this connection, this sense of empathy that we get, this sense of love that is ignited through motherhood or creation of something, or being of service, is ignited. As our womb is initiated when we in menstruation, the menopause, when our brain changes, of course, because we are meant to go within. We become the seers, the inner wisdom, the knowing. And as soon as we sort of shift that perspective, things actually start to change. You start to see things differently. You actually do need to rest more and pause, and there's diet things you can do, and there's strength training we need to do. There's all these things because we are powerful. So that's the story. So the story we tell ourselves is very important, and the story that you can relate to yourself is going to be very important as you move and grow older.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments for Verena?
Oh,
No, they're popped in the
yeah,
chat.
with the chat. Yes, the slide. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I have a question
Sure.
about, so yeah, thank you. It was very inspiring to hear you speak. And yeah, I do work with the rites of passage, and I wanted to ask a bit about, like, the grief, as you were saying, when people move through these phases, and what guidance you give for those that are moving into the archetype, and then they're sort of like, oh, but I miss those parts of me, and what kind of guidance do you usually offer for that? I'm not sure if grief is the right word, but
It can
to
be.
kind of look back on those parts and carry them forth with you, but also letting them go at the same time.
And I think it's individual for people, and it probably is different. For example, working with from mother to wise woman, when their whole life has been about being a mother and being of service, and then all of a sudden having to like shift their identity to one of being heard. And so they're dealing with it. So it's actually moving on, like all those things you wanted to do. How do you see yourself? All these experiences that you have got wisdom, that you are valued. So be moving very much to what you want, that there's still goals to achieve, because some women, their goal was, I'm going to be a mother, my kids are going to grow up, and then they're like, oh, what do I do now? So it's like setting new goals. And the grief would be to know that those aspects of you are still there. And that's important from maiden to mother. It's knowing that you chose, the choice is yours to be a mother. And the choice, well, sometimes, but most of the time there is a choice, and there's a beautiful transition. And also to understand divine timing, that it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't meant to be. And also that your maiden isn't lost. Your maiden isn't lost, and that it is the transition, but also the remembering that if you stay there, it will become stale, and that you are on an evolutionary journey, and that it's important that change is inevitable. Staying the same isn't a choice. And staying the same will actually create more anxiety, more overwhelm, more but choosing something different, that, I have that fun sense of self. I've still got that joy in me. I've still got the things that you loved about being a maiden, bring that in. And the thing that sort of changes is from maybe selfishness can be a hard word, but it kind of service to self to service to others can bring you more fulfillment. Mother to wise woman is that now you can expect respect, and that you've got something to offer, and you can be of service in that way. The grandmothering, that you can be the one who holds legacy, that you don't have to be the doer to fix things, that you can be the wise person that the people come to, and you can start offering yourself that, and you can start playing with your intuition, and where you'd probably never allowed yourself to visit those areas before. So it's like looking at what areas does that bring, and why do I want to go there? Because that's really great to go there, because that's part of it. I'm going to be better when I'm there. So I think if the journey, if you said, if we're going to stay the same, you can go on holiday, but if you stay at this place, you're going to be the same. But if you go to this place, your life, you're going to learn more, you're going to be more, you're going to be who you truly are. Authenticity. And authenticity is the highest frequency. And so when we're working with the arc and these transitions, it's like you're being more authentic. Because otherwise, if you're still trying to be a maiden in a mothering years, or you're still trying to be a maiden from a selfish point of view, in a time when there is meant to be things of service, that you're actually lacking your authenticity. But your authenticity is when you bring all parts together. Does that? I probably went off track there.
No, it's really beautiful. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Verena and Bianca, for asking. Does anyone else, Sienna, Erin, Belinda, Celia, does anyone else have anything they'd like to ask while we have Verena here? Okay, in that case, Verena, thank you. Oh, yeah.
I had to turn my microphone on. Yeah, I was just about to type and send a little message while Verena was talking, saying, I feel like I'm in between all three.
Yeah.
I am such at a transition in my life where I feel like I've got the maiden, the mother, and the wise woman, and they're all coming into one. And I'm like, I feel like I've got so many different things running through my brain each day. So.
And that's probably a beautiful place to be. And I know what that feels like, because I felt like that very much for a long time. And it is, and I didn't have anyone sort of explain this to me. And I think it would have helped that I have all aspects. So one, I can tap into this intuition, which is strong. Like I have wisdom now. I've got life experience. I've got a connection to my intuitive self. And the mother is that you know how to hold things together, that you're responsible. And the maiden brings in your creativity and your joy, so you can access that. So it's like, where do I need to access my joy and energy and creativity? And maybe that's with your business, with your children. Your wisdom can be the choices you make for your business. And the mother is like the amazing multitasker and the holding space, is that I am actually creating something. And the wise woman can give you, it's like your future self giving you directions on where you're going. The wise woman is your future self saying, hey, Belinda, what does this look like? And you can tap into that guidance that will come, because right now you are in an element of creating. You're creating something, and that's awesome because your kids are getting a little bit older, but you can start to have fun with that. Where it was, when kids are really young, it's a lot heavier because there's more to do to make sure they're well. And as they get older, that expands, and you can bring more joy, more maiden fun into it. And it's like the perfect combination, I think.
I think that's one of the beautiful things about having children when you're a little bit older as well. I know now if I was to give birth to a child, it would have so much more life experience and wisdom that I would be able to share with it, because I was still learning with my babies when they were little. Whereas, Belinda, your children have the benefit of all of those archetypes contained within you. So it makes you a better mother, a better business owner.
Yeah, it does. And it is like your future self. You can access the excitement and energy and creativity from your maiden self that wanted this, but you have the wisdom of the mother and the wise woman. And the wise woman is the intuition to track you on your way, to know when this feels good, that doesn't feel good, because you've accessed your womb. You can actually feel into this space of what feels good. Your intuition is probably much stronger now than it's ever been. And your guidance, and it's like to acknowledge that. So when we acknowledge that we have that power, the messages will become more freely, and you'll feel more confident in the choices you make.
Thank you so much, Verena, for being with us here today and for sharing your wisdom so generously. This has been a beautiful and important conversation, and I know so many women will have taken something meaningful from what you've shared. And thank you also to everyone else who joined us live or who's catching the replay later. We're so grateful to have you here as part of these conversations inside the Feminine Network. If today's session spoke to you, please make sure you connect with Verena, follow her work, and continue the conversation with her beyond this masterclass. You can find her in our Bling book at Verena White. And if you'd love more support, connection, and conversations like this, we'd love to welcome you into the Feminine Network. Thank you again for being here, and I really hope we'll see you again soon.